Welcome to this series of InDesign tutorials. My name is Celia Rumley and I will be your lecturer for this series. And this is basically aimed at a quick start introduction to InDesign, aimed at students who have no previous knowledge of this application. During the next few sessions, we are going to build a poster together. And I suggest that when you listen to these podcasts, that you stop each one at the end of the recording and replicate the things that we have discussed and that I've explained. And hopefully then 2 or 3 sessions down the line, you will have a completed poster. InDesign is a fantastic application that can be used for both print and online work as well, such as website banners, Twitter banners, etc. So let's get started. So we're going to go for print today because we're going to set up a poster, but it's just worth bearing in mind that you can also go for web. And this is something that I use regularly for setting up website banners, Twitter, Facebook banners, etc. And this is where you can put in the pixel dimensions. So today we're going to go with print because we're going to set up a poster. So we will go with an A4 option, and you will see down here there are a variety of other options that we will be looking at later on in this series, but it's just worth bearing in mind that at this point you could choose to set up more columns, choose a different shape completely if you wanted to go for a square poster. Facing pages will allow you to have 2 pages which sit next to each other, a little bit like a book. And down below we have the all-important bleed. So if you're intending to produce a poster where the colour goes right to the edge of the page and beyond, this bleed option here is really vital, and I recommend you put at least 3mm in. I like to choose 5. And then this is an area that gives the printer that all-important extra wiggle room so that when he trims out the final design, he can throw away this excess bleed colour around the edges. We're going to have a look at that later on in the sessions when we look into more advanced aspects of InDesign. So I'm going to leave it like that for now, and I'm going to say create. And here you can see we have our first page. Now just to clarify, that red line that you see all around the page, this is where that all-important bleed would occur. And if I was to draw a box here and fill that with colour, you would see that I would take the colour right out to that bleed edge. And then when the printer trims that down, this section between the edge of the page and the red line will be thrown away. And it just stops you getting small white edges, as you can see, like that happening at the final print stage. So what we're going to have a look at doing now is we are going to have a look at bringing in our first image. So I'm going to go to the suite of tools over here. Now firstly, you may want to make sure that your screen, just the purpose of this tutorial, is set the same as you're seeing here. So I went up to Window, and in the workspace I chose Essentials. Classic will basically give you all your tools along the top, and this was in earlier versions of InDesign. So your machine may well be showing a display such as this. My one at the moment I'm going to put into Workspace as usual Essentials, and then that gives us the tools on the right hand side. Up here your toolbox may well be viewing as a long thin strip. If I could encourage you, just for the purpose of this tutorial, to click these 2 arrows here. And it just means that the icons towards the bottom of the tool palette are just much larger and easy to click through. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the rectangular frame tool. Now if this isn't showing on your toolbox, it may well be, if I click on this tiny triangle in the bottom right, you have one of these other tools selected. And in fact, this is how the whole of InDesign works. where you have small triangles in the bottom of the tool icons. It gives you more options to enhance your design work. So I'm going to go for a simple rectangle frame tool. I'm going to click and drag out my shape. Now at this point it's really worth noting that we have a cross through in this box. Now that is telling me that InDesign has now created a picture box. And not only has it created a picture box as opposed to a text box, but there is currently no image in that text box. So just bear that in mind as we go through this tutorial. So on the right hand side, you can now see InDesign is quite intuitive and it has come up with more options that I may find useful. And one of them is stroke. Now by stroke it simply means the border, the outside of the shape. And just for the sake of this explanation, I'm going to make that quite a thick border, and you can now see I've given my picture box a frame. So the next most important thing we're going to want to do is to import an image. So I'm going to go up to File and Place. Now there's several ways that you can achieve this same action, but for now we're just going to go up to File and Place. I'm going to choose the image that I want. And the first challenge I can see is that the image has come in to the frame and is much too large for that frame. Now, this is the most challenging aspect of InDesign, I believe, that once you fully understand how the image aspect works and placing photographs, the rest of InDesign is really very straightforward. So what I'm going to suggest you do now is go straight to the main selection tool. Now I'm going to move away from this frame tool because otherwise all it will do is give me endless frames. So I'm going to go up to this main selection tool. There we go. This will allow me then to manipulate what I have in front of me. I can simply drag across those boxes and hit delete on the keyboard. I can click onto the main frame to reshape this box however I want. Now note how at the moment we have two things happening here. We have a frame, but inside, if I go to the very center, you will see you now have what someone once said to me looks like a donut. Now notice how the icon has changed to a high five hand. If I click on that now, I can drag the image as well. Now this is where InDesign differs vastly from Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. You actually have two completely different elements here. You have a frame which allows you to crop the image, and within there you have the image that floats around completely separately. Imagine a traditional frame that might be on your wall, and if you've put a photograph into that frame, the two things are not connected. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, once you've had a go at moving that image around and then moving the frame around, and what I'm even noticing is when I click onto the image, the colour of the image itself, the bounding box, is a different colour. In this case it's brown, and when I click onto the frame, there we go, you can see that that bounding box to do with the image has now disappeared. Now I'm going to introduce you to some brilliant shortcuts over here, and the first one is frame fitting. Now if you're new to InDesign and you really just want to know the basics enough to produce a simple poster, then what I'm about to tell you is going to be an absolute lifesaver. So this first icon here is called Fill Frame Proportionately, and if you click on there, what it does is it shrinks the image that we know was way too big a moment ago to fit the frame, and it does it as best as it can. So occasionally you might find that there is little bits of image left outside. So let me show you again. Now obviously this shape is never going to fit perfectly into the frame, but as I click on here and I do fill frame proportionately, you can see it's actually fitted the image into the frame in this best way that it can. And we have bits that unfortunately don't scale down and are left to the left and right, but this is where I can start to move the image so that the crop's appealing. Now we have other options along there as well, but for the purpose of this tutorial, what I'd like you to do is to create an image and click fill frame proportionately. Get confident with the fact that you have two completely different elements, a frame and an image, and just explore those features of InDesign. Once you've done that, the next thing we're going to have a look at is there is an option of sticking the image to the edge of the frame, so the whole thing moves together. Now this is much more in line with PowerPoint and Word. So what I'm going to do now is simply click on the edge of my frame and click Auto Fit. Okay, now that's sitting underneath frame fitting. And once that's selected, both the image and the frame will scale and move as one. So just have a go now at unclicking that option and note how the frame is completely independent and the image is loose within that. Just try clicking that fill frame proportionately to get things all reset. And now try the auto fit. There we go. Now try the auto fit and see how both the frame and the image move together. Okay, so I'm now going to put that at the top of my poster, and I'd like you to join me again for the next tutorial, where we're going to be looking at some really handy keyboard shortcuts for bringing in multiple images, dragging, dropping, and we're going to look at the all-important links menu as well. My name's Celia Rumley, and this is my course on the Introduction to InDesign features. Thank you for joining me.